He looked straight at her and said, "People like you should be lucky to stand in this courtroom." That one line stopped everyone. Gasps filled the room. Jasmine Crockett stood still for a moment, her eyes locked on the judge, her jaw clenched. What no one knew was she had come prepared for this moment. Before we dive deeper, do not forget to subscribe for more powerful real-life stories that will leave you breathless. The courtroom was supposed to be a place of justice, not judgment. But the way Judge Ralston leaned forward in his chair, smirking, tapping his gavel with mock authority, made it clear this hearing was about power, not fairness. Jasmine had entered the courtroom to defend a local activist wrongfully arrested during a peaceful protest. But from the very first second, she sensed something was off. The judge kept interrupting her, questioning her credentials, calling her overly emotional when she raised strong legal arguments. The gallery, filled with curious observers, shifted uncomfortably. Whispers floated. Some looked away. Others stared wide-eyed. The tension was thick, like a thunderstorm about to hit. But Jasmine, she did not flinch, not once. Instead, she quietly opened her briefcase and pulled out a small, sealed brown envelope, one that would change everything. The moment Jasmine placed the envelope on the table, the judge scoffed. "Ms. Crockett, I hope that is not another emotional outburst in written form," he said sarcastically, clearly trying to belittle her in front of the courtroom. She calmly looked up, her voice unwavering. "Your Honor, this envelope contains documents you may want to review before you continue insulting officers of the court. It relates directly to your financial connections, particularly one you failed to disclose last month." That sentence dropped like thunder. The courtroom fell silent. The judge's face twitched. His hands froze. Even the bailiff glanced nervously at the paperwork. Jasmine slowly pushed the envelope forward. "Shall I proceed, or would you like to recuse yourself before this becomes very public?" she said without raising her voice. Everyone in the courtroom could feel it. The power had shifted. Jasmine was no longer the one being judged. She was holding the gavel now. What happened next would change the judge's life forever, and the courtroom would never be the same again. The judge tried to laugh it off, but it came out hollow, forced. "This is outrageous," he muttered, flipping through the pages. But as his eyes scanned the documents Jasmine had handed him, the color drained from his face. The first page alone revealed a shell company that had donated thousands to his private account, one that had direct links to a real estate developer currently being protected by the very court he presided over. And that was just the beginning. Whispers erupted in the courtroom. Lawyers leaned in. Even the opposing counsel's jaw fell slightly open. Jasmine stood tall, her hands calmly folded in front of her. "Would you like me to read aloud the list of cases you refuse to recuse yourself from, while holding financial interest in the companies involved?" she asked, her voice slicing through the room like a blade. The judge fumbled to gather himself. This is fabricated. Where did you even get—" "From your former assistant," Jasmine cut in, "who turned everything over to the ethics board just 2 days ago." The courtroom doors swung open. 2 federal marshals entered, scanning the room until their eyes locked on the bench. The marshals did not say a word. They simply walked toward the bench with calm authority, their presence louder than any accusation. The judge stood up, his voice shaky now. "You cannot be serious. I am a sitting judge." One of the marshals calmly responded, "You were, until 5 minutes ago." Gasps rippled across the room. Cameras clicked from the press gallery. The judge's hands trembled as he reached for the gavel, but he never got the chance to bring it down. One of the marshals gently but firmly took it from him. Jasmine remained still, her expression unreadable. The man who had just mocked her, called her incompetent, laughed at her wardrobe, questioned her education, was now the one being escorted out like a criminal. As the judge was led past her, their eyes met. For the first time, his were filled with fear. Outside the courtroom, a crowd had gathered. Protesters, supporters, media, all waiting. When the doors opened and the disgraced judge appeared in handcuffs, chaos erupted. The cameras flashed like lightning, voices shouting questions from every direction. Why was the judge arrested? Is this really happening? Jasmine, how did you do it? But Jasmine Crockett did not answer. She walked out of the courthouse with silent grace, her head held high, Not out of arrogance, but out of quiet strength. The same courtroom that tried to humiliate her had become the stage of her greatest vindication. The judge, once hailed as untouchable, was now the face of disgrace on every news channel. Allegations of corruption, abuse of power, and racial bias flooded the headlines. It turned out Jasmine's team had been building this case for months, gathering witnesses, documents, hidden recordings, and the trial she was mocked in. That was her trap. She just needed him to show his true colors, which he did willingly. What stunned people most was how calculated it all was. Jasmine never shouted, never lashed out. She just stood still and let the system destroy itself. Justice, real justice, had arrived, but not from a gavel, from a woman who refused to break. The final moment came not in a courtroom, but on live television. Jasmine Crockett stood before a crowd outside the courthouse, reporters pushing in, people cheering from the steps. She looked into the camera and said, "This was never about revenge. This was about reminding those in power they do not get to play God with other people's lives." Her voice was steady, but her eyes burned with truth. "That judge insulted me because of what I represent, but today I represent every voice he tried to silence." The nation watched, stunned. Social media erupted with support. Hashtags trended globally. Schools, universities, even legal institutions began quoting her words. She became a symbol of grace under fire, of intelligence over arrogance, of justice reclaimed. That story of a judge mocking Jasmine Crockett in court ended not just with his arrest, but with a movement, one that whispered a loud truth into every dark corner of injustice. You can try to humiliate a woman like Jasmine, but she will always rise, and when she does, she brings the truth with her.